Welcome to another Visiting Artist Series event. We're going to make this brief just to quickly introduce our three guests, Alex Thomspon, Kelly O'Sullivan, and Linda Lee. Come on up right now. They are the makers of the film Ghostlight. Alex is the director. Kelly is the co-director and screenwriter. And Linda Lee was the production designer. We're excited to have them all here. Alex was an MFA student from 2017.
That's right.
So he's back home, y'all. So make him feel welcome. I'm going to let them say a few words, and then you'll get to watch this incredible movie, which I saw at the Chicago Critics Fest, where it won the Feature Film Award.
Audience
Award just a few weeks ago. And it's really spectacular. I'm so excited to share this with you guys, but I'll let them introduce themselves and then we'll see you after the screening.
Thank you. Anyway, I'm just excited for you all to see this and to have a conversation afterwards. I love talking to these two about this movie, and I'm really excited to hear what you think about it. So
ditto, please enjoy.
Oh yeah, I didn't need to hand that to you.
Yeah.
And a double mic.
Double mic. But yeah.
That's it. Enjoy
Super
it,
excited.
and we'll talk afterwards.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We'll see you afterwards. Come on up, everybody. Okay, wipe your tears. Get ready for a conversation. I thought, so once again, we're introducing Alex Thomspon, who's the director of the film, co-directors, Kelly O'Sullivan, co-director and writer, and Linda Lee, who's the production designer for the film. So we welcome them. I can't see you, so it's so weird.
Yeah.
I thought it would be really fun to start with a game show, a little bit of a speed round.
Okay.
We're going to see whoever answers first. I'm going to ask some really quick questions. You just give me the answer.
Okay.
I feel like there are some questions that we don't need to spend a lot of time on, but everybody always wants to know.
Okay.
So we'll just do it. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, first question. What camera?
Alexa 35.
What was the budget?
We can't say.
Under $1 million.
Under $1 million.
Yeah.
There's a lot of numbers under $1 million.
Yeah,
There's
a
like
lot
999,999.
That's right.
Okay.
Very far under.
Where was it shot?
Waukegan, Highwood, and Highland Park.
So I was very moved by this movie, and I definitely had to wipe tears away when I saw it at the Music Box a couple weeks ago. So thank you so much for bringing it, and thank you for making it and making a film that's very empathetic and about so many different themes. I'm wondering if you could, in your mind, maybe we could start with Kelly as the writer. How would you distill this movie? Like if you had to, is there like a theme that rises above? Because it's about so many things, right? We were talking earlier about like, it's about age and ages that it's appropriate to love and how to love. It's about suicide, right? It's about trauma. It's about family. It's so many things. Is there something that was like your guiding
Several
core?
things. I mean, I think that emotion needs to be expressed, and to find a safe place to do it is essential. And then I think empathy over judgment, that ultimately Dan's work was to look at his son and his son's action through an empathetic lens rather than a judgmental lens. And then what you're talking about, that age, sort of the perspective of love through different ages, is explored.
And how did those things, all the things that Kelly just said, when you guys were directing, how did you communicate? What were sort of some of your shorthands for going back to those themes while you're directing? And also, what was the process of co-directing like? Like, how did that function when there's two people and one voice?
I mean, tell me if you think differently. I don't think we really talk about themes. No. I think like what's important to me as a writer, and then us as directors, is that I try to bake it in there, and then have everything based around character and story. Because if we focus too much on themes, then I think there's the temptation for it to become heavy-handed, or for it to be less based on the reality of what's happening in front of us. And yeah, we don't really talk about themes. I mean, we do sort of at the script phase, but not even then, really.
No. I feel kind of allergic to themes in the making of the thing. I use St. Francis as an example because I remember not knowing what that movie was
And
at all.
I was like, it's about shame and healing.
Yeah, and
you're
Kelly
like,
was like, it's
"Oh."
about shame and healing.
Their first feature together in 2019.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think, to your point, of one of the things that Kelly was interested in with this script is we try to approach, and I try to approach the characters and the scenes and everything with that same kind of empathy, that same like clear-eyed, non-judgmental gaze. And so as long as things feel real and honest and are like moving the story forward, then they feel right. I think it's a lot of trust in the script, which is why a director can say, I'm allergic to themes. And then at the end of the process, you have a movie that's very richly, like, has very rich theme work.
And people with a microphone are like, theme. Talk about themes. Well, what's that, like, practically, how does the co-directing function for you? What does that look like on set?
We were just talking about that it's very similar. So we have a 5-month-old, and it's very similar to
a baby.
Yes,
5-month-old
not
what?
a hamster, to parenting. And it's not like, okay, you take tummy time and I'll take nap time. It's like we're both parenting all the time fully, and we're both directing all the time fully.
Yeah.
So there are some things that we might not sort of naturally gravitate to. Like I'm always supremely interested in actors and performance. And that's something that I feel very at home with because I'm an actor myself and I feel very playful in that space. I feel less confident in like talking about lenses. And I know that Alex is very confident. But
very playful in that space.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are things that we sort of naturally go to, but it's not like I'm just like, okay, whatever you want the picture to be. And it's not like you're like, whatever you want the performance to be. We are definitely opinionated on all of it and then talk about it with ourselves and our collaborators. And I'm curious what it's like for you from your perspective.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
I feel like it was fairly fluid, but sometimes I would lose one of you to different corners of set. And if there was like a change that we had to make for the frame, I'd want to confirm with both of you. Just because I think that was the toughest thing, is making sure everyone that I was working with felt like they had an equal hand in what was being done. And that I wasn't just confirming with one and forgetting the other, because that was my biggest fear on set, is just, ensuring who was heard and when and for what.
Were you guys on the same walkie channel or different walkie channels? Like, was Linda like, okay, I'm just going to tell Kelly that I want to do, no.
We don't typically, we don't have walkies. Our other people have walkies, but we don't. We don't have a walkie.
Yeah. Which was like sometimes great and sometimes like, where did Alex go? Where did Kelly go? Yeah. But it was okay. It was pretty fluid. And like the sets, we had a base that was so close by, because Waukegan, like we were all on one street for the majority of the shoot. So
Linda, can you talk a little bit about like the heart of the movie that kind of came up with the themes and like what you used as your sort of focal point? And maybe that changes per scene, per house versus school versus community theater center. Like, what kind of themes were you returning to in order to design the film and the way it looked?
Yeah, I mean, the clearest thing that came to me through reading the script was that there was a lot of love in it, but not just familial or romantic. It was just a lot about relationships, and that every relationship can be valid in helping you or supporting you through a hardship. And so I know our earlier conversations were making the mundane beautiful. And so I feel like for this particular project, it was so much about knowing who the characters were and making sure they could breathe on screen. And so their environments, I felt like I had to channel through Dan's mind, or I almost said Tara, but Sharon's mind, and then like Catherine's mind. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. Yeah. But like the family's mind, and then like the theater troupe's mind, to let them design it for me almost. So yeah, that was a lot of the exercise. My backbone was usually, who are these people and how do I want them to relate to their spaces, because how they relate is going to make it comfortable. And that means they can really grow there. So
I really like that idea of making the mundane beautiful, because I know one thing I saw as this film did really well at Sundance, and then it was like, keep doing well. I'm waiting for it to come to Chicago, and then it took a couple months, right? I kept seeing that poster image of Keith holding Rita, or I'm using real name and character name, holding her, Romeo holding Juliet on the bed with the fairy lights and the white material, and just thinking like, oh, this is going to be a really gorgeous, dramatic, like beautiful theatrical film. I thought the whole thing was going to resonate from this sort of theatrical setup. And then as soon as the film starts and it's just like a guy in a construction jacket on the street, I was just like, what film am I watching? I thought I was going to see that. But it's like it has that overall effect of like taking us from the construction jacket to the like repurposed wedding dress for Juliet. And you just believe when you get to that like sort of setup moment on the stage, you really kind of like earned that beauty after kind of that journey of the mundanity and the realism, really. Well, that's maybe just kind of on the same theme too. I'm curious about, like, since you're the director who might have leaned a little bit more towards lenses, camera, the look, what was going into your mind about, like, you know, how did you want this to look from the start, and what did you do to make it look that way? Like, what were some of your directing choices to get it to look?
We talked a lot about vibrancy, which is something that we've been trying to bring more and more into our work. And it's something that it kind of gets to live rent-free between sentimentality and, because everything, you know, blood is vibrant, roses are vibrant. Like, something can be vibrant and not be sentimental or pastel colored, or, it is in contrast to like a Ridley Scott aesthetic, which is like desaturated and sort of monochromatic. But that was something that I think we sought out. But then in the lensing, we really focused a lot on neutral, normal lenses as much as possible. So we actually, our 35, our 40 was actually the sort of dream lens, but it was from a different set. So we ended up leaning a lot on the 35 and using it quite a bit. And then it became like Catherine's lens because she moved a lot. The daughter, yeah. She moved a lot, and so her movement was really sort of interesting and exciting on like a lens that was a little bit wider. And for her, we would go even a little wider to the 24. But it was trying to like choose lenses and block scenes and cover scenes in ways that would ultimately support the blocking and the story. So we talked a lot about like trying to have actors move in and out of spaces, in and out of shots, let them kind of pilot our camera as much as possible, because there is like one scene in St. Francis, which has like 16 marks and 14 pieces of coverage. And it was just a function of me not knowing what the hell I was doing. And like, it's like my least favorite scene ever. And I wanted to avoid that at all costs. And so try to create like we try to create an organic set too. Like, I think Linda is one thing that you did really wonderfully was you created these environments that we could just live in. And so, we talk a lot about like lighting 360, like that's like the dream is like, let's light 360 so we can shoot everywhere. But no one really discusses like dressing 360. And you really dressed every set. You dressed like the home, like the whole first floor.
I think about like all the frames of their actual family photos that like we never actually see.
Yeah, I know. We never see them. But it was helpful apparently, because Tara, I remember a moment as I was like buzzing around these rooms trying to make sure everything was set, when I just heard like Tara calling me from the bedroom, just like, and it's a sleep, like a bed night scene. So the whole room is dark. And I just thought I was imagining things. And she kept calling, and I went in and she's like, that's my wedding photo on the wall. And I guess I had put that there by accident. But also like it helped her dig into the world of it, I guess.
And just to talk a little bit more about the choices we made for the look of the film, we decided early on with our DP that before he goes into the theater, it's on sticks. And then as soon as he goes into the theater world, or as soon as his emotions start to get out of his control, that's when it becomes handheld. Like whether the emotion is good or bad, that then that sort of carries over into his home life. That then when they have the big argument and he says, get the fuck out of there about the garden patch, that's after he's entered into this world of where people are actually experiencing emotion, and it sort of like catches, it's contagious, and then it bleeds out into the rest of his life in a way that feels very destabilizing.
Yeah. I think you guys do that so well, because I'm like, I didn't even really notice that. But then I'm like, but I felt it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the emotional journey of the film is very clear and very felt, but I'm not sitting there as a filmmaker too. And a cinematographer, I'm not sitting there nitpicking like, ooh, it's handheld now.
Yeah.
Well,
Like it takes off at the right moment that it's
Good.
supposed to take
Yeah.
off.
You can always tell, I feel like, in movies, like it's such a tell when it's like, oh, handheld, something's going to happen.
Yeah. Ooh,
And
yeah.
like we really wanted to avoid that. So like you said, it was kind of cool that it was like good and bad emotions meant that we were sort of unhinged a bit.
And a few things you guys just talked about kind of brought up a good topic, which is that the family in the film is a real family. So Keith and Catherine Kupfer and the dad and the daughter, those are their real names. And then Tara Mallon is the wife of that family.
Catherine Mallon Kupfer.
Yeah. And they're really, those two have been married for quite a long time, and they have this daughter, and they're all actors. You want to talk a little bit about how you found them and how you knew it was right? Because I mean, you could have, I know you met Keith first, which you can talk about, but like you could have met Keith and then not been into the rest of the family.
Totally.
So like, how were you sure about that casting?
Yeah. Keith and I were in a play together 10 years ago called The Humans. And he played my dad in that. And it was in a very small theater space. And so every night I saw what an incredible cinematic actor he was. Like he's great in a 1,000-seat house, and he's amazing really up close too. And so I wrote this part with him in mind. And so it was always Keith for both of us. And then once he had been cast, you know, talking about Catherine?
Yeah. We did a reading with him, and he was like, I'd love to audition. And we were just like, the part is yours, essentially. And he texted, I think, and was like, my daughter would kill me if I didn't say this, but she, you know, she's now familiar with the script and would like love to have a shot at Daisy, and loved the idea of cussing at him, or like cussing a lot. And so we had another reading. Like we do audition roles, and we worked really heavily with PR casting to like audition certain roles, but it's really fun to like get the movie up on its feet and like hear people engaging and interacting and see how they are as Greg and Jonah. So many of the actors who are in it were not auditioned. They were like cast from just being in the same room together. But Catherine was just like Daisy. I mean, she was really hard on herself. Like at our break before talking about it, she was like in a corner being like, Dad, I sucked. Like I was horrible. And it was just obvious. She was
like, I was flat.
I
Came in flat. I stayed flat.
Yeah.
I'm really, no,
I like
you're
how
amazing.
she's got like brassy Annie energy. You know what I mean? Like she's like, I used to do Annie and now I'm too old. What am I gonna do? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really awesome.
And then Tara is like the Chicago theater legend, has her own theater company, Rivendell Ensemble. And I had known her work just through being a Chicago actor. And then you watched her reel.
Yeah, I don't know why we're like, Keith, amazing. Like, he can play to a 1,000-seat house and up close. Catherine blew us away. And it's like, and we watched Tara's reel.
No, but I knew Tara's work like a theater actor.
But she was awesome. I mean, it's a good thing. You know, I think certain actors just like show up on camera, and Tara just absolutely kills it in the scene with Kate Winslet. She had many scenes in the film, but yeah, she was awesome. And it was just like, okay, we wouldn't have made the decision if it wasn't the right one for everybody. And I'm really glad we did, because they brought like themselves to the parts.
Yeah, there's a certain level of intimacy that you achieve that, I mean, sure, they could be just really great actors and pulling it off, but there really is something that there's a timeline that you can kind of see with them, you know, that long-term familiarity, especially like I think I mentioned earlier in those like the intimate scenes between the husband and wife in bed.
Yeah.
Or when she's just like, I'm going to be sexy now.
Yeah.
And then they kind of can't. Like that seems it just seems so familiar, not too spectacular, very realistic. And there's a certain way they knew how to do that with each other.
Yeah.
I think that really shows.
They didn't have to be careful with each other. Like when Tara pushes Keith, she like really pushed him.
Yeah.
And just sort of like the ways that they would mess with each other before we'd start rolling and during takes. You know, I think a lot of actors would feel this sense of hesitancy with each other because you don't want to cross the line, but they were so comfortable just being like, shut up. Okay, do that line again. And it was great.
Yeah, really fantastic. Another question here. Let's see what we're gonna. Okay, how about when you were? I mean, this could be during your St. Francis phase, 2019 or around now. What other independent filmmakers or films or pathways were you looking up to when you were getting started in making these films? Because I know, these are like you have producers. Production company, you ended up with distribution, but these are really made by you guys. Like you're doing a lot, you're pulling it together, you're really there, you're overseeing everything. Were you looking at other filmmakers or films and saying like, that is an awesome pathway, or that's inspiring?
We actually don't have a production company.
Oh.
So that's one cool thing.
Yeah.
That's a really good question. I think that for me, I got really lucky because on St. Francis, it was a couple producers, like 4, who were just really down for it.
James Choi.
Never heard of him. Yeah. Ian Kaiser, Raphael Nash, another DePaul professor, and Eddie Linker, and a couple other folks who were just like, yeah, what a producer means is they're like here to enable the vision and the project and push it forward. And they trusted me a lot, and Kelly trusted me a lot to like handle financing and crewing and negotiate with DePaul to work with students. And it was unlike anything I'd ever heard of, really. It was so small, and it felt like this sort of arrogant smallness where it was like, why do we need a lawyer? All these things are templates. Like, why do we need an accountant? Why, like, I to this day write the checks for St. Francis myself. and then it was like a dare. It was like, well, let's see how far we can go. We didn't even print posters at South by because I was just like, that's exhausting. I don't want to do that. Let's see how far we can go without it. And we got pretty far. And so I think doing it again and again, it's just it's like we're all in grad school for making movies, and you just start to realize it's like a skeleton. Like everybody's got a skeleton. Like you don't have to relearn the human body every new skeleton. You're like, okay, I see the cranium is a little different on this one. Like we're gonna have to. I don't know how this metaphor ends.
I was like,
and then we all die.
I like the lighting here. But I think over time, I did not think of myself as a part of a community or as a part of a continuum at all. I was more interested in the way that films were made quickly in the 1940s and 50s. I did not.
Roger Corman? Were you thinking about that?
No, like Raoul Walsh, Michael Curtiz, these people who we know for like one movie, but who made like 50. So I think probably actually I've talked myself into one name, which is Steven Soderbergh.
Oh yeah.
He's somebody that I feel like we often talk about and think about in terms of like the way that things are done. And I think Sean Baker spiritually, I know that he's doing things this way as well. So it's interesting because I now know that we are on a continuum with other filmmakers. Now that we've been to Sundance, you start to see who's doing it the way you're doing it. But at the time, I don't think we didn't think anybody was going to see the St. Francis. Well, I guess I did, but I don't.
Thought people would. I would not have written it the way I wrote it.
Kelly stars in St. Francis, which we highly recommend you see. Yeah. It's available on Amazon Prime.
That's right. Yeah. No, I didn't go to film school, so I knew nothing about film. But I feel like when I started to write, I like looked around and I was like, I like the way Greta Gerwig made Lady Bird. I like that story. I was looking at it much more from a story perspective rather than budget level. That's something that I've learned along the way. So I feel like I was kind of lucky in that way. Like I've been totally ignorant this whole ride. And it's been great because I feel like I haven't sort of talked myself into the corner. So often I talk to other filmmakers, like people will be like, can I pick your brain? I'm making a short for $80,000. And I'm like, you can make a fucking feature for that. Why? And then when you start to like break it down, you learn that people are telling them these things, that they're telling them, oh, you have to spend this amount of money, blah, blah, blah. So I feel very lucky that I came at it from a rather ignorant point of view. And that then I was able, I hooked up with great collaborators who also don't come from a traditional path. And so it means learning on the job is hard, but it's also nice because you're not learning some archaic or sort of formulaic way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like if you look to what you're told independent film is, it's already out of date by the time you're learning it. Yeah. And like every single, like your $50 million sci-fi script, like you could make it for nothing. Like you could, it'll look different, it'll feel different, and it'll appeal to a different audience. Mm-hmm. But like it might get you a lot closer to like your Marvel movie than trying to raise that $50 million. Mm-hmm. May I ask, Linda, this was your like first film.
Yeah.
If I can out you for that, but like, who were you looking to? Were you looking to anyone and like drawing from anyone in the film landscape for like inspiration?
And you come from architecture.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I wish I could say I had inspiration, and I know that I had influences, but I can't recall them right now because the only thing I'm thinking about is like I remember reading the script. But the last day at my architecture job was Friday, and then there was the weekend, and then Monday was my first day working on Ghostlight. And so I feel like I was just kind of intuitively going how I thought I should go. I didn't know I had an option of not fully dressing a house, so I did it. And then I realized like later after, I was like, oh, if we, like I could have just done one wall, and there's like so much of it that we didn't see. And I don't think it's I don't think it was a bad thing, but yeah, I guess, I don't know, it just felt like another design problem that I could fit into. And it was kind of lovely to watch you both run a crew in a way that felt like I could speak up about anything. And I'm sure like maybe it was because I was department head too, but I just felt like I could come to anyone with a question and it would be answered. But it did seem like the problem solving just had to be quick. As long as everyone was on their feet and responding to each other, then it was working. And so, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question. I think I got distracted by it. But, yeah.
I get it, though. I mean, like, we always have...
It's like you make your own rules.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
like, it's where I felt like I was what I was doing.
You always have, I feel like we always have the ambition, or I always have the ambition that we're going to, like, watch these 3 movies and they're going to become the guiding lights. We watched the trailer for John Cassavetes' opening night.
Oh, I love that.
Just
movie.
the trailer.
Yeah.
Which was one shot of Gina
Rowlands.
And then we watched a movie called Sister by Ursula Meyer, which is one of my favorite movies. I don't know that it influenced Kelly at all. But
I watched Waiting for Guffman.
Right.
And Manchester by the Sea. Those are my 2 biggest influences.
That's a weird combo.
I know. I totally know. But like, I think you see it in the film.
Yeah. There's really, really great moments of comedy, really great comedic timing, and really like heartbreaking, vulnerable moments too. So I can actually definitely see that. Oh gosh, I could so many questions. Could you talk a little bit about working with Dolly DeLeon, who plays Rita? Because that's one thing when you're talking about these things you're expected to do in an independent film, because I'm trying to make my own feature right now. And even when I'm talking to random people, what I hear all the time is like, you got to get a star. You got to get that one person. And was it a little bit of, does it come from that influence world where you just sort of like we love her. Like what's the story of having the one person, especially plucked from outside of the Midwest,
Yeah.
and brought in, and she's so special and she's so good, but also I could assume that anyone who knows her wouldn't assume she'd be perfect for this role, right? You wouldn't immediately go to the woman in Triangle of Sadness,
Right.
who's like takes over the boat.
Yeah.
So how did that come to be, and how does that tie into the whole independent structure of this thing?
We share a manager.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So we loved her in Triangle of Sadness, and Adam had been like, you and Dolly should work together at some point. And we were like, yes, please. And then when this came up, she read it and really responded to Rita. And we knew that she had had decades of experience doing theater in the Philippines, because it was really important that whoever played Rita, they not just be like a movie star or a TV star, that they come from that theater world, because it is such an ethos. And there were so many moments where it's like, you can't really teach it. You just kind of have to be of that space to know how to exist in it authentically. And then we met with her, and she was really lovely. She was like down for this kind of filmmaking too. We sort of wondered, like, would she fit in with all of these, I say blue collar as a compliment, like working Chicago actors.
Yeah.
And then we were like, oh, by the way, I think a week before we said, we don't have hair and makeup.
Yeah,
You have to do your own hair and makeup. And she was like, great. So we knew that she was going to be fantastic. And then she was.
She brought a lot of her own wardrobe, like, so these were all like certain, so there's like things that you are taught that are good, like good things to do to make an independent film, like, which means make a cheaper movie. But then there are things that like you, like to your point, you have to make your own rules, like follow your heart. Like if you want one of your leads to be from Manila, then budget the flight. That's it. Make the offer. Like,
To be fair, I don't think we had to pay for her to fly from
we
Manila.
flew from Los Angeles, but like to the point, like it would make a lot of sense to cast someone out of Chicago.
Yeah.
When you're not paying for hair and makeup, but you're paying for the flight to have that person.
Right.
Like you're kind of choosing, but do people really see because if you had a hair and makeup person to make everyone look like my dad,
Yeah.
like a normal person, would I notice the difference if it were professionally done versus like Keith looking like Keith?
Yeah.
When he shows up, I don't know if I would, but man, is the money worth it for Dolly?
Totally.
Yeah.
And watch the movie again and see if you can tell that one of the co-directors did a bad job shaving Keith every day.
It was
You
not me.
shaved
I shaved nobody.
I personally shaved Keith's face
Is it because he can't shave
every
himself?
4 days. I found out that he was being nice and did know how to shave with the electric razor. But I had been like, do you need help? And he was very Midwestern and was like, yeah.
That is so weird.
That's a
So
cute story.
eventually I was just like, it's the pink one. And then he'd just do the pink one. But at first I think he thought it was like more complex than that. And so he was like, you do it. I don't want to mess with it. And then eventually he's like, oh, he's just shaving me.
You have to find another way to say that. He's just shaving me.
I mean,
See, and then the IFC logo comes across.
yeah.
He's
these are
just
the
shaving me.
things people
IFC. Yeah. In about 10 minutes, we're going to go to audience Q&A. So if you want to line up over there between the columns, there's a microphone in the hallway or in the walkway there that I can't quite see. But then you can be ready right when I say, and now, audience Q&A. But in the meantime, I'll ask one more question. So, Alex, you were in this room at some point. You were one of these students. Maybe not literally this room.
I never attended a visiting artist series, unfortunately.
Well, you didn't
But I
have
did
a class
have a
in this
class
room?
in this
Okay,
room,
there you
yeah.
go.
With Mark.
Mark Monet?
Yep.
He
Cinematographer?
obviously had a huge
Yeah.
influence on you.
It was called cinematography.
Hey, he's brilliant.
I learned about that.
Yeah.
He's a
That
really nice
thing
guy.
that you're using now. Like
Yeah,
you got a
all
job from
those
the things you
tools,
learned.
No,
If
I
you were-
hire someone to do that
Oh,
actually.
yeah. But you need to learn how to communicate to that person,
Yeah,
right?
very important.
I heard you talking about 40 millimeter lenses.
Yeah, you got
I
to know
heard
all that stuff.
it.
No,
You don't have to know that stuff.
Yeah.
You don't.
it's good to know.
You do.
Yeah.
But if you were,
Mark, that was a great class, Mark.
yeah.
I'm serious. It was
Mark,
a
are you
great
here?
class. If you're here, if you can hear me, out on YouTube.
if any of you were in this audience right now as a student, undergrad or grad, and there were these, doppelgangers sitting up here with a new hot independent film
Mm.
that made them cry just like 15 minutes ago,
what would you ask them? What would you, if you wanted to be you, what would you ask yourself? Did I just throw you
Can I
into a
answer quickly?
wild spiral?
Yeah.
I would want to know what of the movie was independent and what wasn't. Because
What does that mean? What do you mean?
meaning there's a lot of independent film that is not independent. There's a lot of independent film that comes from a celebrity production company that is been pre-sold before it started shooting, that was actually developed at a studio or a mini studio or a micro studio or a micro studio. And it's just good to know, because you're out there and you're like, oh my God, how did they make this independent $20 million film? How could I ever do that? And I think it's really useful to know where that access stops and where the sweat begins, and where the stuff that you, the filmmaker, are actually bringing. Because I think the movies that I found the most useful are, as a younger filmmaker, are the ones that are mostly independent and have like a little bit less of that like kind of whatever,
There's
like
a marketing company behind it.
sure,
pointing it out.
yeah. Because I think it's really hard. It's a really weird business, and like if you go and you see a movie that's $10 million or $20 million, and that's your like that's how you imagine your first step is. It's a really big first step. But if your imagination is like, I'm going to go out there with my friends and I see a movie that did that, and they got into Sundance or they got into South by, I think that's really useful. I took all the time. But
No, that was
Okay,
great.
we have 5 minutes to the Q&A, the sign
that's
said.
plenty
So
of time.
if you, yeah.
I think I would want to know, like, what is the most important thing if you were just to take one thing away from the journey of it. And I would say the relationship to peers. Because I think when I was a student, there was this idea, and I was a theater student, but
at Northwestern.
at North, yeah. But I think there was this idea in my head of like, I need to be making, it matters what this person who runs this theater company, these older people who know more than I do. And if I can get in their good graces, will they help me? And I think the most important thing has been, we always talk about coming up with our class, meaning like the relationships to people sort of our age and like sort of our experience level, maybe a little above, maybe a little below, but rather than trying to get in the good graces of like the gatekeepers, just making things with people sort of on your level who are down to make things the way you want to, finding people who you think are super talented and really kind people, and then making things from there. And I think that was something that I didn't really grasp as a student.
Because we never know. I mean, one of us could become the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
One of your group, yourself, could be the one who breaks through, and then all of a sudden you're with them.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to know that ahead of time.
Yeah.
Which one of you will rise to that occasion or open a door?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have any questions for yourself?
I feel like my questions are still happening and like being asked to everyone else, or even like you too, but probably like even for people sitting here, I'd have a lot of questions just because I've never been a film student and I've been a design student, but I think what you say about peers, it seems to me, just in my short amount of time in film so far, that it seems like you're just making things with your friends or people that you know and that you've met, even if briefly, if there's like a creative buzz that clicks, then you want to work together. And then it just becomes a test and like an experiment that you embark on together. And that seems like a really wonderful thing. So maybe just, it's not really a question, but just about, not exactly knowing the right people, but just like knowing the right people for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And the different, like knowing that difference, I think would become the question.
I think that's to go back to this idea of independent filmmaking. That's such a big part of it, is that like over assembling the team, like this hot person did this and made this much money on here. You're just like, who do I want to see every day? Who gets me? That's number one. And then if you can, through that energy, you hope you can all take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Well, the work is better, and that's at the end of the day, the work is the thing that gets seen by programmers, by distributors, by sales agents. they have a Sundance every year. What's important to them is if they see something that has a story or a voice that's fresh and unusual, that's you. So I think that what you said is much better than what I said, because that actually leads to great work, and great work really does like make its way to the right places.
Well, and just another example is like when I was writing the script of Ghostlight, some people were saying like, well, maybe we could go to Dax Shepard to be the construction worker.
Yeah.
And it's like,
No offense.
yeah.
Offense to Dax,
No,
I mean, a little bit of an offense.
No offense, but like the idea of there's always somebody better than the person next to you. It's like, but what if the person next to you is awesome? Like,
Yeah.
go with the person who you know is going to be great.
Right. Well, and look at how it's paying off too.
Yeah,
Especially because
exactly.
you're getting attention, critical attention, festival attention, but audience awards,
Yeah.
audience attention, which is also like, that's so rewarding.
Yeah.
And that's who you're making it for. And that's who's in the film.
Yeah.
They must see themselves on screen.
And I think audiences are really smart. And I think they smell stunt publicity casting. I
I
think
thought you were going
like,
to say audiences smell really good.
audiences smell.
they're
so
smart, they
bad.
smell good.
No, but I think like I really do think like that authenticity matters so much. And if you're also, it takes forever for like any celebrity to like read something. Just the idea of like waiting on the hot thing, don't do it.
Yeah.
Make the hot thing.
Well,
Make them hot.
Make the thing that you like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, maybe other people will like it too.
Yeah. I literally, just to say very, very quickly, I literally left LA because all my peers were like, hey, I work at Netflix right now, like puppies are in and gladiators are in. So let's try to think of a puppy gladiator web series. And that was the mentality. Like I'm joking, but it was like, and these weren't the specific people who know who they are. These were other people. But I'm just like, oh my God, everybody's listening eventually on YouTube. But I cut that. But that is just like not the way, that is not the industry you want to be in, That's just not the world we want to be in. And it actually isn't the world. Like all that stuff is, like I said, it's irrelevant by the time you finish making it.
Yeah.
Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
No, I could go on about this forever, but I did see the light go on for a moment, and we are ready for the Q&A if someone has a question back there.
Hi, I'm Tony.
Hi.
Hey, Star.
People at home.
My question is, you guys use a lot of licensed music. Was there a specific decision to use a lot of licensed music? Also, I know you can't go into the budget, but how much did it cost hypothetically? Also, thank you for shooting at Bunny Hutch. I used to play mini golf there all the time.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. The guy who runs the Bunny Hutch now doesn't like us very much.
Story for another day.
Story for another day. There was thought that went into the licensed music, but for the dance sequence when they're all dancing to Under Pressure by Queen, it's because that's my favorite song and that's what I played on the day. And then I was like, that has to stay in. And so the producers had to track it down.
It was painful for Pierce Cravens, our poor producer. It was literally like, I was really stressed out that day. I'm sure you remember. Kelly was like, put a phone in the cup, started playing Under Pressure. I was like, no, that's going to be so expensive. And Pierce was like, no, it's a Sony. I have a connection. And it turned out that there's another song called
A different
Pressure,
song,
just Pressure. And they thought, for some reason, we wanted this song called Pressure, which no one has ever heard of. So it was not free. It was by, I don't even know, but it was like 15 grand. You asked how much, right? It's like 15
Yes.
grand.
And total, it's like 30 or
like
something.
30, I
It was
think.
like the cost of your education.
Yeah. And then Oklahoma was sort of similar, where it took a lot to let them wrap their heads around that we weren't actually making a musical of Oklahoma. But it ended up being about the same, like 15, I think.
And of course, as a teaching note too, it's like because you need to be able to have it in the film to have that first screening, then for it to continue, you're paying for it to like be screened around, and then you got to get the rights for if it's streaming or in DVD form, and that makes the number balloon up a bit too.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, for $15,000 for the use of like one of the greatest, biggest songs of all time, with multiple, like for forever to be in your film, that's kind of worth it.
I think it's worth it.
I think if you have no money, I would avoid using that kind of music. If you have some money, then budget for it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Oh,
Thank you.
Do we have another question
What
back
other
there?
light effects are going to happen?
Yeah, you're coming out of the dark. It's like
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
I saw that. I love how Chicago-based the film is. Like, you used DePaul students. It was filmed in Chicago. That's awesome. But the one thing I noticed that was in Chicago was Skywalker sound, and I thought that was really kind of cool because it's like big Hollywood sound. So I was wondering, just what was it like going to Skywalker sound for an indie film?
It's a dream.
It's a dream. This is our
14.
fourth thing with them. My favorite story about how we got them is Alex emailed a rough cut, right?
Very
Of
rough.
St. Francis to info@Sky Sound. And
We were at dinner that night.
yeah, you
and
can tell the rest of the
4
story.
hours later, got an email from John Knoll, who's like their director of production, I think, and he was like, "We really like your movie. We'd love to work on it or talk more." And once we heard how much it was going to cost, I was like, "Oh my gosh, so nice to meet you someday." And they're really, I mean, I think they really like the movie, but they're also really lovely. And they wrote back and were like, "We have a relationship with Northwestern. Let's make this a mentorship program. Let's find a way to make this work for your budget." So I would just say, once you go to, no offense to any Chicago post sound houses, once you go to Skywalker Ranch and have a film finished there, it's like, it's just everything you ever dream of an experience being. It feels like you're really doing it. And so we love finishing there because our process is so scrappy. It's so DIY. It's like painting flats in the rehearsal space. And so getting to go there is like this big thank you hug. Yeah, but yeah, we have a relationship with them and they're really lovely. So,
Yeah, they're awesome.
yeah.
Cool.
It's as cool as you think.
Yeah.
Cool.
the lesson there is always ask. Just ask.
Yes. Yeah.
The
just
worst they can
ask.
say is no, or give you a
Yeah.
really high number that you can't achieve. You know?
Yeah.
I've had really good luck with color post houses as well. You know, just asking for, saying this is our number, you know, and you didn't ask for advice, but in terms of color and sound, make friends, be friends with the supervisors, the post supervisors, because they don't stay at the same agencies. I've chased the same post supervisor through 4 movies, from The Mill to Blacksmith, like all over. So to Carbon, VFX work, color work, titles, yeah. Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Hey.
Emerging
Hi
from the
there.
darkness.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the film. I just wanted to ask, I know you've been kind of showing it at different places, so what's been some of your favorite audience reactions to showing the film?
I think my favorite audience reaction. So Dan is not necessarily my dad, but he's sort of like a version of my dad, in that my dad can be like very goofy, but I'd never seen him cry. And he came to Sundance and I saw him after and he cried and he was crying. And that's my all-time favorite
He
audience.
cried and he was crying.
He cried and he was crying.
The man cried.
He cried in it. And then I was like, "Dad, did you cry?" And he was like, "Of course I did." And just like, I think there's something really special about, because I am not a middle-aged man, but there's something really cool about the number of guys like Dan who have come up and said, like, this felt true to me, or this felt true to my dad. That's been really moving for me.
I always feel really special when it feels like we pulled it off. Like my mentality is always like, we pulled it off. Like I'm not like sitting in the theater shaking. I just feel too close to it. But at Sundance, this is probably not my favorite, but it's one that pops in my head. Our cast, so much of our cast was there and our crew was there. And Brad Smith, who plays Jim, the lawyer, who's like a very funny, cynical, dry guy, was openly crying at the Q&A and was like, I think this is the greatest movie about theater ever made, or something like that. And his hyperbole, certainly hyperbole, but his like emotion just really moved me. And to have someone that I know so well, who I expect to be like, thanks, man, like, good job, good job, buddy. That just made me feel really good. Made me feel like, oh, Okay, there's more than pulling it off.
Last one. Keith
Oh,
at
yeah.
Sundance got a standing ovation. And I think anytime
Keith gets a
people are celebrated like that, especially people who aren't, he's not like a famous actor. And for him to be appreciated because he has had such a like storied career, and I would say any of the cast and crew, like to get to see the cast and crew be appreciated has been the best.
I would agree. What about you?
I think my favorite was the test screening at the Music Box, like way earlier.
We weren't there.
I was giving birth.
Oh my God, I forgot.
The test screening of the
No.
film.
No, excuse us.
I
went
we
into
were-
labor a few hours before, so we had to miss it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was there.
You got all the note cards though.
Well, I think selfishly that was my favorite just because I'd never seen like a film on screen or my work on screen. And I think I forgot like some of the things that happened in frame because I just remember them as physical spaces. And so just like seeing something on the screen and then hearing people actually laughing was surreal and a little nerve-wracking. And then every time after that, I haven't been able to watch it with a clear mind because all I'm doing is nitpicking.
Yep.
But that time will pass, hopefully. So
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hello.
So excited. I like how people just emerged from the back.
I was wondering what the experience was like kind of combining Chicago theater and kind of like combining that with film. I'm a theater school student. I know Dexter. I love him.
Oh my God.
So I was just kind of like wondering what that experience was, kind of taking like Chicago theater, which is like kind of such its own little bubble and its own little thing, and kind of translating that into like large scale film.
Yeah, it was the best.
Yeah.
It was the best. And it felt a little bit like summer camp. Most of the actors who are in the film, we have had relationships and sometimes like long-standing relationships with them. Like in the same play that Keith was my dad, Hannah, who plays Lenora, the director, played my mom. So it felt like just years of finally getting to say, hey, do you guys want to come work on this project together? And then we really did play not video games. We really did play theater games. And we got to, also let them be seen for the great film actors that they are. Because I think sometimes there's this idea that theater is sort of separate and theater acting is separate, and it can be. But I think most great actors are able to sort of modulate. Next is last question. Thank you.
We're very literal. We cannot
I love
read.
it. It's
not
so
read
good.
signs.
Please write something fun for the last thing.
We'll read whatever you write.
That's right. I promise.
We need to shoot these separately so that
Yeah.
like
So they can
people
cut- edit
online
them
can
in.
see.
Is there a camera just on the whiteboard?
Yeah.
Well, Kelly, I don't mean to interrupt, but I have when you were co-directing, did you ever have to talk to these friends, these co-theatrical people who you know well from the theater, and help them a little bit with turning that theater vibe into film? Like, was anyone being too theatery at any point? Did you ever have a moment where you were just like, dude, I know you're really good at doing this in the theater, but you have to dial it down because this is a movie? Or because
I didn't.
no.
The only note that I gave sort of to that effect is a couple of actors I said, now just do it more like you. Just do it more as yourself. Because like the guy who played the lawyer, Brad, that character is pretty laughable or can be. And so I think he came in and he was sort of playing a heightened version of it. And then it was a little bit of like, just do it more as you. And then I think that sort of snapped people quickly into the like, we don't have to comment on these characters. But nobody really needed that note. For the most part, it was just let yourself come through a little bit more.
Great.
Yeah.
That's a good note.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you. Woohoo, Dexter.
So now this is the last question, I guess, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. I was just kind of curious since most of us are students, keeping a lower budget, especially in terms of production design, what sort of tips you have for that while still making it look authentic?
I feel like I really lucked out into being hugged by the theater community, just by extension of you two, just because it was a lot of borrowing material and like clothes, but also I was going to so many thrift shops. And I know that's like the answer that you probably expected, but so many thrift shops, and then also understanding like when can I reuse things in a way that won't be recognized on camera. Like, so a way that certain things are draped in one scene maybe is folded for like more volume in another one. And so it was just a lot of piecing things together. Finding, I think Anna, who worked with us, found like pallets in an alley, and we brought them onto set, and then we ended up like using that for dressing. And so it was a lot of resourcefulness, which maybe is like the expected answer.
I want to tack onto that really quickly. How fun was it to dress the Romeo and Juliet set, which is, you know, where the ladder kind of gets messed up when he tries to climb, and like, it's so corny and perfect and worse than like a high school play, right? It's a little bit, you can tell that they like cobbled it together, and the costumes aren't right.
Somebody
like, oh, the costumes are so good. Like how fun was that to put together, and where did you were those pieces all borrowed from theater?
Some of that was borrowed. I found most of that, I'm sorry, off of Amazon. But I was also, I guess for that stage, we didn't want it to be too beautiful, or I didn't want it to be too beautiful, because first off, they have a week, and maybe I just got stuck in the realism part of it. But it's like they have a week, and then they're also trying to like scrap things together. And even with all of those constraints, there's still a beautiful stage. And so having that guideline, a lot of the theater stuff from the rehearsal room are on stage, they're just covered. And so I tried to use the same elements that we had in the rehearsal space, just so that even if it's a silhouette or a form that's under a drape that's like covered with ivy, it's still hopefully like subconsciously recognizable. As proportions that you've already seen earlier on. So yeah, a lot of that was like reusing from the stage, and then Amazon.
With the costumes, there's like a bit of story in the film where, because we see them literally like open up the tubs and like pull the costumes out, like that was real. That was actually them getting to see the options for the first time and kind of trying things on and playing that performance, like not really performing, just like actually like, does this look good? Like, does this look good? Like, when all the chairs get pulled out, that's really the cast, us saying like, okay, everybody, we need to pull all the chairs out.
And when they drill the first arch together, that's them just putting it together for me.
So long.
It did. And
the second arch was not them.
We had Amanda and Pavitt help us too, so that was great.
I think maybe set your story around people who don't have a lot of money.
Like, that helped.
Honestly, like we were able to make things look like we didn't have to buy expensive things because they wouldn't have access to expensive things. And so I do think, you know, had things been set in like a palatial theater with grand sets, like there would have been almost no way to keep the budget down. But we could sort of work within the constraints of everything should look borrowed and everything should look a little hodgepodge. And I think that helps a lot.
Well, and when you brought up Lady Bird earlier as like an inspiration, it's like I can see it in the story and the emotion and the family and the coming of age, but also in the like, it's set in a totally achievable, plausible, known, like there is a house just sitting there somewhere waiting for you, and those objects are around us, and school uniform. I mean, Timothée Chalamet's hard to grab. You know, he's a hard prop to get. but you know, that the just setting it in a real space, and then that realness as it like intensifies the themes and works with the themes. It seems like I can see that sort of sisterhood in your films. I'm waiting to see what they're writing. Love y'all. Wrap it up.
Smiley face.
Smiley face.
Love it. This is going to be our new thing, and these videos are going to be very weird and weirder and weirder.
What if I heard something horrible and I was like, how dare you, and made everybody think it was you?
I do think it's funny that you're reading them out loud, because you're obviously trying to keep them secret.
No, you're part of this.
It's like, we're just filmmakers are aware of all the seams. We always see through the fourth wall.
We're like, interesting. I see you're panning over there.
I heard a click of the camera.
What do you think you're going to get?
Is this thing on? Thank you all very much. This was really great. I'm so glad you guys got to see the film. It's going to open up at the Music Box on June 14th.
Yes.
Yeah.
And run for 1 week or 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2
I
weeks.
think.
2
at
weeks in the
least.
big theater, I'm assuming. Sometimes they go big theater into small theater.
I
in
think
the
it's
second
going to go
week,
big
but-
into small, and then it'll spread out to other theaters around the
Yeah.
area.
In
That's-
the country
Yeah.
as well.
Spread the word. I mean, I think this is a really important film for Chicago, and it's also just beautiful. So
Thank
thank
you.
you all so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.